Hey.
Welcome to my last video detailing the first major tenure of my version of the DCEU. If you haven't seen the other two videos in the series, or haven't seen them in a while, I would recommend checking them out. There will be a link to both in the description. But I know that not everyone has the time, so here's a quick recap of everything that's happened so far. In Phase 1, we set up Superman as the heroic savior of Earth after defeating Metallo. Then we have the events of Wonder Woman and Aquaman, which are the same movies that we already have, but without the references to BVS. Our last solo movie in this phase is Green Lantern, which introduces Martian Manhunter as well as other planets and aliens through the Green Lantern Corps and the places they protect. Then, we'll close this phase with our first Justice League movie, with a team comprised of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Green Lantern, and Martian Manhunter fighting against Brainiac and his forces. After that, in Phase 2, we have our standalone Batman movie where he fights against the Court of Owls and struggles with the fact that he will never be able to see and monitor every threat. Then we'll have Shazam. That's it. Shazam was pretty good, so there's no huge changes that I would make. After that, we have our Superman sequel where he fights Bizarro, and because of the similar looks between both of them, public distrust of Superman is increased. Then, we'll have our Wonder Woman sequel where she fights Cheetah and has a run-in with the Flash, which leads into our first Flash movie. This Flash movie will function as an origin story for him. This version will be more in line with the one from Justice League Unlimited. After that, we'll have Hawkman, which will be about Hawkman and Hawkgirl's origins and their millennia-spanning relationship. Following that, we'll have our Justice League sequel. This will have General Zod as the main villain, and we'll have the Flash and Shazam replacing Martian Manhunter and Green Lantern as they are off-world during the movie. The final movie of this phase will be our Suicide Squad movie. This will have Deadshot, Black Manta, Killer Frost, Captain Boomerang, Solomon Grundy, and Harley Quinn in it. The Joker will not be in this movie. The villain of this movie will be Ra's al Ghul. Alright, so here we are at our final phase. Starting off this phase will be our Green Lantern sequel, and will be an adaptation of the Sinestro Corps War. This movie will introduce the other Earth Green Lanterns, and will heavily feature Kyle Rayner as one of the more important figures. While the Anti-Monitor plot point will be addressed and used in this movie, it won't be as prominent as we aren't building towards him to be the final villain of this universe. Next up, we'll have our Martian Manhunter movie. This movie will be a prequel to the first Green Lantern movie and will depict how the Martians were wiped out by Darkseid in his quest and how he first learned about the anti-life equation through learning about the life equation. This movie is really a 2-in-1 because the invasion doesn't start until halfway through the movie so that we, as an audience, can get a chance to connect to the Martians. After that, we'll have our first titled sequel, which will be Batman Tower of Babel. This will essentially be Justice League Doom, but live action. While I do prefer the comic version where Ra's al Ghul is the instigator, I would rather introduce Vandal Savage than rehash Ra's al Ghul. With the public falling out between Batman, the Justice League, and the average populace, a new younger team emerges, and that's where we have our Teen Titans movie. This version of the Teen Titans is identical to that of the 2003 animated show of the same name. Instead of the newer roster that's been showing up, this movie will have Dick Grayson as Robin, Cyborg, Beast Boy, Raven, and Starfire. The only real character change that I would make is that Starfire isn't as ditzy as she is in the show. She'll be more in line with her later iterations. The point of this movie is to show who will take over for the Justice League and introduce the younger heroes of the DC Universe. Also, there's definitely going to be a Static Shock cameo in this. After this movie, we'll have a Shazam sequel which will introduce Black Adam. I don't really have any ideas for the story, since I'm kinda unfamiliar with Shazam's lore outside of the basics, but introducing Kahndaq as a sort of land equivalent to Atlantis could be interesting. I also think it's important to show Black Adam as not just another reskin of Thaddeus Sivana, but as a more darker version of Shazam, and that he just wants to protect Kahndaq and serve its best interests. Following that movie will be a crossover between Dr. Fate and Constantine, and will function as building out more of the mystic arts and other weirder and more out there aspects of the universe. I do want Constantine to have a growth arc from being self-serving to caring more about the people around him, but honestly, aside from having Felix, Faust, and Wotan as the main villains, the story of this one is more in the hands of the imaginary director of this movie. Next up will be our Flash sequel. This movie will introduce Reverse Flash and the Speed Force as a whole. Through the Flash and Reverse Flash's fights, they will travel throughout the space-time continuum, but because of their relationship, it is revealed that Reverse Flash has been leading the Flash to a specific point in time. We then find out that Reverse Flash brought the Flash to what he calls his greatest failure, which is where he shows the Flash failing to save his mother. Once the Flash comes to grips with the fact that he can't always rely on his speed to solve issues, he uses his mind and his interactions with other heroes to outsmart Reverse Flash and make it back to his time. After that, we'll have the end of the Superman trilogy. This is the movie where we get our core members back together. After Batman Tower of Babel, Batman's relationship to Wonder Woman and Superman is strained, but still stronger than Batman's relationship to the other Justice League members we've seen so far. This is where we finally see Lex Luthor as the main antagonist. Luthor creates an android with the ability to recreate the abilities of a metahuman once it comes in contact with that metahuman's DNA. So pretty much Amazo, he's just making Amazo. During this movie, we find out that after the various battles that the heroes have had on Earth, Lex searches those areas to gain those DNA samples. Over the course of the movie, we see that Lex's android can only replicate innate abilities like Superman's heat vision or Wonder Woman's strength, but not the Flash's speed or Green Lantern's various powers. After Batman learns of this, he sends a message to both Superman and Wonder Woman that they need to work together to fight against this new threat. At the end of the movie, Superman and Wonder Woman extend an invitation to rejoining the Justice League, to which Batman declines. Alright, this is it. This is what everything has been building up towards. These next two movies will have the longest summary so far, so sit tight. This first Justice League movie, titled New Gods, opens on Apokolips, Darkseid's homeworld, where we see the death and torment that abounds there. We finally get to see Darkseid unobscured talking to a prisoner. Darkseid monologues about the beginning of the end and how his plan will allow him to defeat the prisoner's father. The introduction scene ends with the prisoner being revealed as Mr. Miracle. After that, we pick up with the Justice League, where they are receiving reports that individuals across the universe are being abducted, and the wave that seems to be abducting them is moving towards Earth. As a precaution, several of the Justice League go into deep space to investigate. Their transmission is wiped out. The Justice League's plans switch to the defensive and work to fortify the Earth before the wave comes. Once the wave makes it to the Milky Way, the Justice League's plan is enacted. The Earth Green Lanterns use their powers to envelop the Earth in their hard-like constructs. Once the wave seemingly teleports to Earth's orbit, we see that it is a huge space armada larger than any the League has ever seen. The largest of the ships sends a beam down to Earth, shattering through the Green Lantern's constructs with ease. We then see that Darkseid, Kalibak, and Steppenwolf have landed. Darkseid declares his reasoning for coming to Earth. I know that this planet is home to some of the most intellectual minds the universe has ever known, and I have come to take them. A battle breaks out against Darkseid's forces with Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, The Flash, and Shazam leading the charge. Although Kalibak and Steppenwolf are defeated, Darkseid hasn't been touched or engaged in the battle at all, and when Superman goes to punch him, Superman is defeated easily. The fight continues, and then it is revealed that Lex Luthor, Mr. Terrific, and Batman, who hasn't responded to communications, has been captured and are aboard Darkseid's ship. Darkseid then scoffs at the defeat of Kalibak and Steppenwolf and leaves. The rest of the movie revolves around the Justice League trying to interrogate the New Gods, and Darkseid using the smartest minds in the universe to find the anti-life equation. The movie ends with Darkseid gaining 90% of the equation, while the Justice League, with Mr. Miracle having escaped Apokolips, Orion, at the behest of Highfather, and Cyborg's help, create a boom tube to Apokolips. The next movie, titled Justice League Darkseid War, starts immediately after the events of New Gods, and with the main members of the Justice League, except for Batman, standing in front of the boom tube. Orion and Mr. Miracle volunteer to go through first, as they are the most familiar with the dimension that Apokolips resides in. Shortly after the Justice League agree, they follow while leaving Cyborg to monitor and open another boom tube if necessary. Standing side by side, we see the silhouettes of Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Aquaman, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, Orion, and Mr. Miracle as they look forward upon Apokolips. Due to the entire planet being one city, they were transported a large distance away from Darkseid's throne room. Mr. Miracle informs the team that they haven't tripped any of the alarms yet, but that they should still proceed with caution. There is a short journey before the team is detected and is overwhelmed by Darkseid's infantry, the Parademons. After the League is defeated, they are taken to Darkseid's throne room and are forced to watch as Batman, Mr. Terrific, Lex Luthor, as well as countless more are hooked up to a machine that is designed to probe their minds for the anti-life equation. Darkseid then reveals his plans to use the anti-life equation to reshape the universe to bend to his will. Back on Earth, Cyborg along with the rest of the Teen Titans and Shazam are attempting to open another boom tube to rescue the captured Justice League. By keying in on Superman's energy signal, they are able to open the boom tube right in Darkseid's throne room. They are able to open a boom tube large enough to get the captured Justice League back, and with that, Orion says that Darkseid has become even stronger while on Apokolips, and must be removed to weaken him, similar to how Superman was weakened on Apokolips because there was no yellow sun to charge him. So they use another boom tube with Shazam, the Flash, and Wonder Woman to push Darkseid into New Genesis while the rest of the Justice League wait for him there. Another team, headed up by Mr. Miracle, work to free the captured minds before the anti-life equation is finished. The next scene is a fight scene between Shazam, the Flash, and Wonder Woman and Darkseid. It takes the combined powers of all three to move Darkseid, and he falls into the boom tube that transports him to New Genesis. After that, we'll pick up with Mr. Miracle and his team trying to free all of the prisoners. After they figure out how to free them, Batman, Mr. Terrific, and Lex Luthor are freed and immediately transported to Earth while the other prisoners are just transported off-world. Once they are informed of the situation and the plan, Batman, Mr. Terrific, and Lex Luthor begin preparations to fight on New Genesis. We then cut to Darkseid facing against most of the Justice League as well as Orion and other new gods, when we see another boom tube opening with who we assumed were the rest of our heroes, but is instead one of the Apokolips new gods with the incomplete anti-life equation, which Darkseid imbues his body with to become nigh unstoppable, even while being drained of his power on New Genesis. This is where our final battle takes place. A boom tube opens with Batman, Mr. Terrific, Lex Luthor, the other notable Green Lanterns, Martian Manhunter, and Dr. Fate ready to take on Darkseid. After a coordinated attack to incapacitate Darkseid, Batman reveals a device the size of a small box. He then throws the box to Orion and tells him to press the button. The box then begins to siphon off the energy from the anti-life equation and begins to transfer it to him. As Darkseid is incapacitated from the device, his army of parademons begin to storm the heroes from multiple boom tubes. The chaos allows for Darkseid to disconnect from the device. In his desperation, he attempts to teleport back to Apokolips, but Orion is able to stop him and impair his ability to do so. By keeping Darkseid in New Genesis, the heroes are finally able to defeat Darkseid, as well as keep him from achieving his goal of controlling the universe. The movie ends with Darkseid being perpetually in contact with Radiant after being imprisoned on New Genesis. After the events of the conflict, the movie ends with Batman rejoining the Justice League. And all of that was, give or take, my summary of what every live-action DC movie would be for the next 10 years or so. Although I was taking inspiration from what Marvel did with their phases, a lot of what I was trying to do for my own DCEU was create an interconnected universe that felt like there would be new heroes around each corner. That's why each hero, for the most part, only have one movie. And just like with the other phases, this phase has a specific theme in mind: moving forward. In this phase, each of the characters must move forward from something. A few examples would be Batman moving forward from the Justice League after the events of Tower of Babel, the Flash moving forward from the mistakes that he has made before and during his tenure as the Flash, and Constantine moving forward, even if it's just a little bit, from his self-destructive nature. With all of that being said, what do you think of my ideas on my DCEU? If you have any ideas, make sure to put them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching and keeping up with all my crazy ideas.